So it looks like we're missing one alumni, so they may show up. But I think we can go ahead and get started. So just so you know, this is being recorded. So hopefully that's all right with all of you. I think you've cleared that with Mike beforehand. But because of that, these useful insights and tips that you'll share with students can be shared beyond just this meeting. Which is fantastic. So I want to invite each of you to start with those introductions. Just one note while others are speaking, if you could just make sure to press the mute button, that would be fantastic. But let's go in alphabetical order. So Joan, I'll ask you to start with your introduction. Sorry, was my audio sharing for that? Okay. Let's see. Joan, would you like to start us off with introductions here? Maybe just 3 to 5 minutes about yourself, your background, your current role, and anything else you'd like to share with students.
Okay. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure and honor to be speaking with you today. I'm located in my gallery on Madison Avenue in New York, and I've been a dealer in Japanese art for over 40 plus years. And I have to say it was my education in Madison, Wisconsin that took me on this road. I started off when I came to Madison in 1970 as a geology major, but with a passion for things Japanese, and switched within 2 years to studying Japanese art and cobbling together a major with incredibly inspiring faculty in the Japanese literature department, Japanese history department, art history, and anthropology. And in the end, it was a course at what was then called the Elvium Museum, now called the Chase and Art Museum, a brand new course called Museum Training and Connoisseurship. And one of the wonderful things about Madison is the experience one can have if one just pushes a little harder. You can get into graduate level programming at an undergraduate basis. And so I was very fortunate to take that program, which exposed me to local and regional museums, to connoisseurship, to registrarial issues, to photography, to all sorts of aspects of museum responsibilities, which opened the door for graduate education at Columbia University. And in many ways, of course, my time at Columbia gave me the tools to become an art historian on a profound level and a graduate level. But what I learned in Madison was pivotal to teach me the importance of objects. And I went from Columbia to becoming a dealer. And now, interestingly, the Chasen Museum of Art is now a client. And you can see works that came from my gallery, even when the museum is open again, on display on the second floor of the new building. And it's been a wonderful joy for me to be on the Chasen Art Council and to be on the board of visitors for the art history department, to wear those two hats, to try and find opportunities for young people to find employment, to inspire them to becoming art historians or to becoming curators and following through on their passion for fine art.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Joan. That's so interesting to hear how important your experiences were at UW-Madison and all the different opportunities you could pursue, but then also how that really has come full circle. That's so cool to hear. So I'm going to turn it over now to Mark for an introduction.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? All right, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Rewey. I'm a graduate from UW-Madison in '92 as a double major of poli-sci and international relations, which was interesting. And my story is a little bit different in the sense that I came into UW and I took the attitude that I wasn't going to let my studies get in the way of my education. And that was what I would always tell my parents at the time when report cards would come out. But what I mean by that is I thought it was important that the UW is very unique, I should say, from a cultural standpoint, diversification, and everything that's available to undergrads or grad students there, even more so now from when I was in school. So I was just involved with a lot of activities on campus because I was not sure what I wanted to do from a career standpoint. So I sit here today. I am now head of sales and distribution for a global money management firm, which is based in Chicago. We have offices in Philadelphia, Florida, Denver, St. Louis, and Los Angeles, and then home base here in Chicago. The name of the firm is Segall, Bryant, and Hamill, and we're a subsidiary of CI Financial, which is a Canadian global asset management firm. So my job is I'm in charge of our sales team, and my role is more of a player coach within the organization. So I'm still actively involved, traveling all around the U.S. and opportunistically at times overseas with the firm. I fell into it somewhat haphazardly. That, as I mentioned a moment ago, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do from a career standpoint. And I was journalism and realized that I couldn't write. And I was told that in an eloquent way by the dean of the journalism school, who was actually a friend at the time. So I switched to poli-sci IR, which I always had an interest. I still do today. I sit on the board of visitors for the political science department, but I was pretty confident I did not want to pursue that from a career standpoint. So my first job out of college was working for a tobacco corporation, Big Tobacco. It was horrible, but I learned a lot of great things from that through failure and just trial and error. And I think that's important to find your way. And I think that's one of the things I see today with undergrads is they tend to be very focused on what they're going to try to do for a career from the get-go. And I think you just have to let things mold over time. So I fell in the financial services industry after that job in a sales role, and I've spent now 25 years at my current firm.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark. I certainly love that you brought up the importance of that trial and error and maybe not being so focused when you're just starting out on your career. I think that's so important.
We can get more into that later, but I think it's very important.
For sure. Great. So we'll go to Mary now.
Thank you, Molly. You can hear me okay? So wonderful. So I have an arts background, sort of. I went into the UW not knowing what I wanted to major in. I thought I wanted to be an accountant. That doesn't sound artsy, but then I was very involved in singing and music and in theater, and eventually found my way to a theater degree and communication arts, radio, TV, film. So I had a double major. While I was on campus, I graduated in '94. I did a 5-year plan because I just didn't want to take summer school, and I kept trying about 16 credits and just couldn't quite hack that. So I'd drop it back every semester and eventually made my way through. But I loved my time in the arts on campus. I loved that I sang all the way through. I was a non-music major, but was very, very involved with all the choral activities on campus and got to meet a lot of wonderful people. And that's what I think is a thread for all of us as we go through life, with that UW connection, and the connections we make, the friendships we make can come back and always have some continuity for us. So I graduated not really knowing what I wanted to do, except I'd had an internship at an ad agency while I was on campus, and they ended up hiring me a year after graduation. I worked at a recording studio in between, but got into the advertising side of things. Eventually, after 5 years there, moved into a law firm as their marketing person. So I went from agency side to client side, saw that for a couple of years. I was the first of my kind in that environment, which was a very fish out of water experience, but ground laying for what I do now, which is in real estate. I am a realtor for 18 years now, and it was a calling. It kind of came to me oddly. And one afternoon, literally seeing my realtor putting open house signs across the street from my house on a Sunday, and thought, well, this is a better way to spend a Sunday afternoon. I don't like doing open houses. It's not the better way to spend a Sunday afternoon, but it got me talking and got me thinking and got me into the classes. And I'm now, after 18 years, I'm actually, as well as being a strong residential producer, I've gotten very involved in our trade organization, our association, as members of the National Association of Realtors. We're members of our state associations and our local associations. And I'm now the state of Wisconsin chair of the Wisconsin Realtors Association. I love seeing how all of the parts and pieces work to make an industry function and to bring it back then to the street and how I interact with clients. So that sort of big picture, be open, and the trial and error that Mark was talking about is very real when you start out. Don't feel like you have to pigeonhole yourself. Keep your eyes open, because possibilities abound when you have a UW degree. And to this, what I was going to say, the full circle piece is, there's people that I sang with on campus as an undergrad that are clients of mine literally today. And you just never know when that's going to come back around.
For sure. Thank you so much, Mary, for highlighting those points, especially about connection and the importance of making those connections on campus and how that can play out later in your career. So for students who are joining us today, feel free to raise your hand or turn on your audio and ask a question at any point, or feel free to put it in the chat and I'll make sure to read those out. I'll start us off with a question. One thing I noticed listening to all of your introductions is kind of this theme of creativity. It seems like that's something that you all value and played a role in either your academic experience or career development. And I think creativity, along with other skills, is kind of key to a liberal arts education. So how have you seen creativity, or maybe other kind of liberal arts skills that you gained, play out in your career, or how do you use those skills in your role? And anyone can feel free to pipe in. We can kind of go around in a circle or have some discussion.
Well, I can say that being in the field of art, creativity is more than mandatory. And I think that UW education, as it exists even today, is an amazing tool for those who take advantage of it, to broaden their education and to experiment and to take courses outside their field of their major, because you never know when those courses will come into play. And the skill set that you may learn that you think is totally useless, you never know. I've hired so many people through the decades, and just recently hired a videographer pre-COVID, having no sense that I was ever going to need a videographer, and now she's my principal employee. So as an employer as well as an employee, it's important to have as many sharp pencils in your toolbox, so to speak, to be able to push a button that you think is useless that's going to turn out to be invaluable.
So one of the things that I identified early on, that I think an importance of whatever you're doing, is to be able to connect with people and have a relevant message, know what you're going to say. But at the same time, you want to be able to tell a story. So I think that's much of what we do, whether you're selling art. And I was fortunate, I grew up in a home with a mother who's an artist, still an active artist in Madison. So I remember the Albium from way back, the original Albium. And what I wanted to do was be able to tell more stories at a young age. So I joined a group in Chicago called Second City. And it was an improv group where I was able to go through their educational classes and then start performing for a period. And it really helps you think on your feet. So if we talk about the world of business, and it doesn't matter whatever we're doing, much of what we do is improv. And that's conversations, that's presentations, things that come along during the day. So it really helped me get more comfortable and be able to tell stories. And I think much of what we do, it's storytelling.
I love that, Mark. That's right up my alley too. I took musical theater classes on campus, and I remember doing some of the improv sections, the yes and it's amazing how that comes into play in how I work with clients every day and how we consult on how to negotiate with the other party in getting a contract together for them to buy a house. And then also in terms of the role I have in the volunteer side of things, with speaking in front of and speaking to the governor one day and speaking to a bunch of realtors the next day, and trying to motivate people and keep chins up and share a message all at the same time. Those other courses that I took on campus that didn't necessarily apply to some of maybe the business side that I thought I might explore, they apply more than some of the business courses that I took in how I conduct business today. So yeah, the creativity and you're being open to other types of courses. And I just came across, I took AIDS and communication. It was the very early 90s in my communication arts program. And I run across those professors in Madison now. So I didn't mention in my intro that I am still in Madison, went to school here, grew up here, never left here. And yes, it's evolved, but it's a cool town to say you're from and stay in.
And just one initial comment for the students online that are thinking like, oh, I don't have a creative bone in my body. You absolutely do. You just haven't brought it out. Everyone has some element of creativity to what they do every day.
I agree with you, both Mark and Mary, 100%. Communication and being able to tell a good story is critical, I think, to no matter what profession, whether you're a doctor or selling real estate or you're bagging groceries. You need to be able to communicate, to make eye contact, to have a sense of relations with other people, very important. But also, I would say they're actually creative skills that one can learn that are not revolving around people, that are more critical today than ever before as we work from home, which is computer skill sets, the ability to master certain programs that can make your life much easier, whether it's a full Adobe suite or it's a Photoshop program or Excel, a bookkeeping program, PowerPoint, all of those things that you do need as a student. You will be surprised how much your employer or future employer might weight experience in those different learnable skills. And I encourage you with free time over a summer to try and take some of those tutorials in those programs to make yourself a more attractive potential employee going forward.
Fantastic. Thank you all. So going off of some of those skills, maybe it's these liberal arts skills or this creativity, but if you've been in positions where you're hiring interns or hiring entry-level employees, what are some key things that you look for in these candidates?
Well, yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I was going to say, one of the things I look for, just not even with internships or with anybody, what's your hook? What's going to separate you? So when you think about a resume, whether you're conveying it verbally or handing somebody a sheet of paper or emailing it to them, they generally look the same. They talk about your accomplishments, your educational background, your job history, your interests. And if you're flipping through a lot of those, you've got to realize that, without being able to talk to the person, what's the person's hook? So I often, when I work with students, and the student I'm working with now, is we spend a lot of time about what she can say that distinguishes her from everybody else, or what she thinks makes her unique. That's really important to convey to anybody about how you're different, how you're going to be able to set yourself apart.
For me, I find that I look at a lot of resumes, and yes, Mark, they do all look pretty much the same, but it's really important for me that I see a resume of someone who has job stability, who has stuck with something and tried it and hasn't jumped from job to job to job. And every year and a half, 2 years, they've tried something else. Because I know that person, I'm going to train that person's going to work for me. And just when they're getting good, they see a greener pasture somewhere else. So I would encourage first time job searches to try and pick something that gives you pleasure or you think has potential, that's going to give you joy in your life and give you intellectual stimulation with people who you like working with, that seem like lovely people with similar values, and stick with it and try and make it work for a minimum of 2 or 3 years, so that your resume over time, and you want an array of experiences, that's great, but don't be a jackrabbit going from job to job to job.
Yeah, I appreciate that I don't hire a lot. I've had an assistant throughout my years as a realtor, and I have one now who's been with me for 4.5 years. And he was a PhD candidate and in higher ed as a counselor in the med school. And but he was a past client of mine, and he had skills, Excel spreadsheets, etc. Sort of along the lines what Joan was saying before, that complement me. They weren't a mirror image of me. And so that was something that I looked for. But the other thing I like is I really appreciate humility and openness to do that. Nothing is beneath anyone. I feel that way about how I operate in my business. I'll go clean somebody's bathroom before the photo shoot if it has to be done, because it's going to get the end result that we all want. And if nothing, I don't do that on a regular basis, but I don't want to be known as the realtor who cleans bathrooms. No, but you need to be able, you look for that in people. I look for that in people that are going to work with me and collaborate with me, that nothing is beneath them. And the more open, I have some theme with me, but the more open you are to new experiences, the more versatile you are and the more valuable you'll become as an employee.
Great, thank you all. That's really, really useful to think about. The next question, and again, students, if you have any questions, just feel free to put those in the chat or raise your hands. But I'm curious, so I want to go back. Mary, you mentioned kind of the role of your connections that you gained at UW. I'm curious how networking or how those connections have shaped your careers in any way, in terms of, you know, just meeting the right person at the right time that maybe led to something, or how you have helped others through networking with them or connecting with them.
Sure, I'll jump on that because that's like I love that. I live it. And it's just this. I know Mark Rewey's name. Yeah, we went to the same high school. So paying attention, listening, just recognizing that no bridge should be burned, because you never know when that person's going to cross your path or you're going to need them down the road. It's invaluable. And I think for me, some of it is just genetic. I've been told that's how my mom operates, and so it's how I operate. But it's been absolutely critical to building the business that I have, that's almost entirely referral based, because I pay attention to who knows who and how they can help each other. And when you can, it's a great endorsement when you can put people together because of paying attention to what they do and how they can help each other is incredibly beneficial from a business perspective, but it's very fulfilling and rewarding from a human perspective too.
I think when I look at the whole idea of networking and connecting, I've always tried to take, if possible, how can I help somebody? Because if you're in a position where you can help somebody, they'll remember that. And I've always taken the attitude of knowing more people is better than knowing fewer, and getting involved with a lot of organizations. And that's one of the things I talked about on the onset, that the UW offers so much outside of the classroom, whether it's the official student organizations or clubs or activities. And it's really important that students immerse themselves in that as much as possible, because as much as you're meeting other people, you're learning more about yourself. And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about the job thing. How do you know what you want to do when you really don't have a good grasp of yourself initially? And I'm still figuring this out at 52. So I've always taken the camp that you can learn somebody from everybody you meet. And it's making real connections. It's not a track race to see how many LinkedIn connections you can get, because I have a rule of thumb that unless I am comfortable with having a cup of coffee with that person, I'm not connecting with them on LinkedIn. And it's just, you've got to be methodical, systematic about it, but consistent. And over time, it builds up. And I look at the base of where I'm at today, and then absolutely 100% started at the UW.
I would underscore that networking is truly critical, and for success in whatever aspect anyone chooses to go into. And one can start, at least in our history, fairly early on with organizations like CAA, College Art Association, attending symposium, attending lectures, attending outside of the campus to make contact with other young people and faculty and perhaps professionals in different venues, so that when you do go on in business or academia or whichever you choose to do, you have what I would call a Rolodex. You guys don't even know what a Rolodex is, but you have your contact list in your database of resources to start your job hunt, or to start changing jobs, or as an avenue just to talk about opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, you never know when you're going to need to draw on that list of people that can be so varied. So that Rolodex Joan refers to, that's precisely what I did when I started in real estate. Well, people know me as a variety of things from my past. How do I get them to know me as a housing resource? I sent a letter to everybody. I drove around Madison, and not everybody, but everybody that I'd come in contact with. Oh, so-and-so's parents still live here. I'm going to add them to my list. And just it absolutely was the foundation for how my business was built, was making sure I hit a lot of different people that had impacted my life throughout my life. And you never know. I didn't graduate from UW thinking I would become a realtor. But there's countless industries like mine where having that group of people, your sphere of influence, whatever you want to call it, helps you, whether it's finding a nannying job in the summer when you come back to home, or a job 20 years down the road. You don't know when you're going to need to draw from it, but you will need to draw from it. So keep tabs.
Fantastic. Yes, certainly for any students listening, just keep in mind you never know where some of those connections or where your sphere of influence is going to lead. So I have another question. I'm curious, so kind of a two-part question. What are the most satisfying aspects of your jobs, and what have been the most challenging aspects?
For me, as a gallerist, I've worn two hats. One is still a curator and author and exhibition organizer for institutional exhibitions at museums. So seeing your name in print and seeing a book with your name on it is incredibly gratifying. And on the other hand, dealing with contemporary art, actually being able to pick up the phone and call a Japanese artist in Japan to say, your work was just bought by the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it's going to go on view, and it's going to be in this incredible location within the museum. I know that changes that man or woman's life, that changes the whole trajectory of their career. And the joy that I vicariously experience from them is truly, heartwarming.
Well, for me, similarly, I get to call people and tell them that they have the home where they're going to bring home babies or have celebrations or cook their wonderful dinners for however many years to come. It is incredibly gratifying because it is life changing, and it's so impactful and wonderful to be able to be a part of that, and such a privilege to be a part of that in people's lives. Um, so that's very, very gratifying. I like how Joan didn't talk on about the things that are difficult in her job. But for me, the joy is working with people, and the challenging part can be working with people. There can be some really, really difficult moments when you're navigating extremely difficult times in people's lives, when emotions take over and they can't be as logical as you may want them to be. But that's the task that I have, and am able to try to be the calm in their storm. But that can be undeniably a very difficult role to play. But that's when you pick a people industry, you have to know that's what you're signing up for.
Well said. I mean, for me, from an accomplishment standpoint, or satisfying is to be somewhere 25 years, build an organization from the ground up, and most importantly, help people and institutions achieve their financial goals along the way. Just being able to build a career in a firm has been great. The challenge, it's kind of staying relevant. I mean, the industry, without getting too deep, is changing drastically. Staying competitive. You would think anything you do as you get older, as you get more experienced, it should get a little easier. And that's anything but with our business today. So that's the challenge with it. It keeps me sharp, but it's every day it's a little bit harder and harder. So it's the grind of it.
Thank you all. Oh, sorry, Joan, did you want to go ahead?
Well, the negative side in my business, which is been under a lot of challenge this past year, when you're dealing in actual, not just goods and services, but actual physical goods that have to get from point A to point B, is when those kinds of logistics go awry, and a work of art that's been created by someone over 2 years and is supposed to be a headline piece in an opening exhibition arrives in complete disarray. And it's heartbreaking, and especially when it's the cause of human error. But in the time of COVID and shipping lanes being closed, we've had more of that this year than we've ever had before, and that's been profoundly difficult.
Great, thank you all so much. So I have another question. It might be a little bit of a challenging question, but you're all in sales roles or in influencing roles, and I'm wondering if you could share, or sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. So you're all in kind of sales roles, and that wasn't necessarily where you started off as students, coming from a variety of different majors and interests, but this is where your career has led you. How would you sell your career path to students who are thinking about going into similar career paths or into a sales type role? And feel free to take a second to come up with your sales pitch.
So let me clarify the question again. Just so are you essentially asking us how we found our way, or how we recommend people find their way?
I think whatever you would like to speak to, but more of how would you recommend people find your way, or what would you recommend in terms of benefits or successes, or reasons why you would recommend your specific role or career path to students who are exploring?
Okay, got it.
Okay, for me, I love being an art dealer. One, because I surround myself with beautiful things and I get to enjoy them, and I'm not a collector. I actually enjoy, maybe like Mary, putting two parties together. So in a sense, I consider myself to be a marriage broker. So I find the candidate, the groom, the bride, whatever, and I find the potential mate, whether that's a collector, whether that's a museum, whether that is an architect or an interior designer, and having that work of art be a defining element in any of those contexts is tremendously exciting. I also love travel. I love to research. I love things Japanese, and being a Japanese art dealer, I'm traveling, well, not this year, but I'm traveling constantly, and I'm going to museums, to clients, all domestically, as well as traveling abroad or to museums in Europe. And so the world of art enables you to explore so many different aspects of the globe, and enables you to also contribute to making the world a more beautiful place and to bringing culture to areas that may not be exposed to that type of culture. So I find that very gratifying, very alluring, and a hell of a lot of fun.
All right, I'll jump in. I love what Joan said about being a marriage broker. I actually really, as a kid, wanted to be a casting director. And people always ask, what did you want to be when you grew up? And that was for a period of time something I really thought I wanted to be, was cast for television shows. Well, I kind of go now and go, yeah, I kind of am doing that. I'm a casting director. I get to listen to what people are after, and find properties that match how they want to live, where they want to live, what's most important to them. And so there's a bit of casting involved. So I think for me, one thing I caution people that think they want to get into the business is, well, I love houses. I love seeing houses, and I love decorating. So that's neat, but it's not entirely. In fact, it's a very, very small sliver of the business of being in real estate and being a realtor. It is really navigating very personal change in people's lives, and it can be personal celebratory, and it can be personal sad and devastating. And being able to deal with people where they are in their lives is a huge part of this job. Psychology majors, teachers, coaches, all have become very successful realtors, and or healthcare providers sometimes that switch into the business. There's a nurturing element to the business. So I think that's a piece that I would say, if any of that speaks to you, this could be a very good career and very fulfilling. And it's gratifying. It is pretty limitless in terms of income potential. It is a wonderful place for women to lead. And so for what it's worth, we've just tipped over the 50-50 mark into more women being in real estate. But when you look at top producers, there's way more women involved in that end of it. So those plugs I would share. It doesn't have to be that you just love houses and love opening doors. It's got to be more than that.
So when I look at what I do, I love to travel. I love to go out and meet people, as we talked about. We love to help institutions try to achieve their financial goals, everything tied to that. It's building something, And I think as I noted before, I didn't necessarily set my career path to do this. It sounds like we all found our way different ways, but throw yourself in. You know, if you think you want to be into real estate, if you think you want to be into art, if you think you want to be in finance, just get exposure. Don't worry about taking something below what you think is below you. I mean, I sold cigarettes out of a van, and I had just come out of graduating with good grades from UW and was involved on campus, blah, blah, blah. But I took it just to get some sales experience, because everyone's like, you don't have any sales experience. Well, I did. That was my first step. But and I cannot stress this enough. It's really important for students. There's a lot of pressure today, and it comes from social media, it comes from our family, it comes from friends, it comes from, you know, to each his own about what we need to do in the career path and how to focus. And I just need to stress that you've got to find your own way, and that's trial and error. So just get yourself exposed some way, somehow, in front of the right people, in front of the right position. And I can't think of how many people in different industries, friends of mine, that started their careers that are very successful right now. And success isn't always deemed on a financial number, that started in a very small position within the firm. And it's how it works, how life works. You don't land up on top right away. And if you do, you somehow don't find a way to stay there. So it's really important to take your time. You got to relax.
And know that you can shape shift. I have in-laws who started down a medical career in college and became a minister. The other one went to divinity school and then went and became a neurosurgeon. And then went on to become an artist, a painter. Your life hopefully is long and can continue to unfold and allow you to reinvent yourself and to fulfill new passions as you go. Don't feel like you're pigeonholed, because then when you do, I think fulfillment can decrease and you limit your options and your opportunities that you may not even see.
Fantastic. All these, oh, sorry. Did someone have their microphone on or want to add? Okay, fantastic. Well, I think that about wraps up the time that we have today. I really appreciate you all being here and sharing those insights with our students. Would it be okay for students to reach out to you via LinkedIn after they watch this session today?
Of course.
Absolutely.
You bet.
Fantastic. Yeah, I really appreciate you joining again, and thank you all so much. I wish you a great rest of your week.